Wuchang Fallen Feathers is a Souls-like, a genre that has now become incredibly crowded as we keep getting more and more of them pretty much every year. It's also a genre that I deeply love, and I love examining the differences between all of the different Souls-likes and what each developer brings to the table. And while I know many people are like me, and anything that is relatively close to a Souls game is something we are going to play no matter what, I do want to say that Wuchang within the genre stands out quite a lot because it's really damn good. Now, just in case you want to know just right off the bat, is this game going to be for me or not? I tried really hard to find a way to summarize it, and I would say that Wuchang is to Dark Souls what Lies of P is to Bloodborne. And that probably sold a lot of you on it just right off the bat. But if you want to know just a bit better what you're getting yourself into, hi, I'm Mug, and this is my review for Wuchang Fallen Feathers. A huge thank you to 505 Games for sending over the review code so that I could get this review out on time. If at any point you enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button because that helps the video spread farther in the algorithm, helps get more people on the Hot Gamer Summer trend and the good vibes over here on the channel. And if you like the way I do news, reviews, and retrospectives, make sure to wait until the end of the video, see if it's worth your time, and then subscribe. Oh, I forgot. You're looking fantastic. Let's get into it. Now, first and foremost, this is a Souls-like unapologetically so. All of the staples are here, from your bonfires to losing your currency/XP upon death, although in this game you only lose a percentage of it, to the traditional level design of the older Dark Souls where the entire level loops back on itself with shortcuts, and then normally ending up with very powerful bosses that when you defeat them, you also gain access to weapons or armor that come from them. Pretty much everything that you've come to expect from the genre is here, and it'll feel instantly familiar and easy to understand, although with quite a few differences. Now, while I do think that something like Lies of P and Dark Souls 1 level design are good points of comparison for a game like Wuchang, it is also very much worth mentioning that this is very much more in the Souls-like direction than it is in the Nioh/Kazan direction, where I would say exploration is less of a focus with more of it placed on combat and technical skill there. But of all the games that I would call Souls-likes that focus a lot more on that level design, on the puzzles, on the interconnected world, Wuchang is the one that leans the heaviest towards an action combat game. I'm mentioning this right off the bat because it's one of the main reasons that I really like it. But if you're the type of person that shies away from the faster, more combat-based games, this might not be for you, and that is the big caveat to keep in mind. Now, if you've always looked at Souls games and just wish they were a little bit more action combat focused, you're going to love Wuchang because that is the best way of describing it. A deeper, faster, more kinetic combat system within all of the usual level design trappings of older Dark Souls games. In the game, you take control of the titular Wuchang in 14th century China as a plague has befallen the land called the feathering, making people grow feathers and go mad. And the feathering doesn't just push the story forward, it is also the reason that you can use magic and all sorts of different abilities. Unlike the other people who are going mad, Wuchang is capable of harnessing the power of the feathering and then go on an adventure that's going to take you through 5 chapters, and depending on your skill level, anywhere between, I would say, 30 some odd hours to 40 plus. And overcoming this and exploring the narrative that, again, very much based on 14th century China. That setting is one of the most interesting parts about the game because, similar to last year's Black Myth Wukong, the exploration of Chinese mythology, of Chinese history, of different areas of China and their stories and their legacy is something that I find very appealing and very refreshing, since it's not something that we're very exposed to here in the West. This means that even though you will be exploring a lot of palaces and a lot of mountain regions and caves in this game, they are very different from the more standard Western fantasy or the now kind of more common Japanese fantasy regarding demons and oni and all of that. It's also apparent in a lot of its stylings, with certain weapons like the one-handed sword or the dual blades feeling much more like a different take on those weapons and their moveset than you would see in other games. And some of the characters, the bosses, the one-on-one duels here feel much more like they have, let's say, a bit of a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon flair than you would find in something else. But that's only where Wuchang begins to differentiate itself from other games in the genre. There are many other important changes in Wuchang. Consider the fact that blocking is not something that you can normally do. It's only assigned to the axe weapon type, and to have blocking as a skill, you have to not have a different, probably cooler skill. Parrying is not really a thing you can do unless you unlock it for the longsword weapon type. The game instead hinges a lot on dodging, and ideally perfectly timing your dodges. You have access to 5 different weapon types, each coming with their own equipable skills, and each individual weapon coming with their own special skill that applies only to that one. And those skills, as well as all of your spells, your magic in the game, is governed by a resource called Skyborn Might. Certain attacks that are parts of combos for each of those weapons can generate Skyborn Might, as well as perfectly dodging through an enemy attack. Doing so builds up this resource that you can then spend on different abilities which might have different costs associated to them, but they are very powerful and can turn the tide of combat, meaning that it's a game about aggression to get Skyborn Might, perfectly dodging the retaliation of the enemy to generate more Skyborn Might, and then spending that Skyborn Might on things that are either going to dictate the flow of battle or lead to big payoffs. Essentially translating everything that would normally be a magic bar, or in the Soul series your FP, and turning it into this resource that flows naturally through combat depending on how good you are at it. The other very interesting part of this combat system is that you can have 2 weapons equipped at the same time. And with the press of a button, you can swap to your other weapon at any point during a combo, or not even in a combo, and immediately use that weapon's signature skill, meaning that you can swap weapons and use each of your weapon's skills in the middle of a fight depending on what you need, with some of those skills having unique properties, like maybe having a dodge or a period of invulnerability attached to it, or being particularly good at breaking poise and setting the enemy off balance. So you can see that the game is giving you a lot of different options. It wants you to experiment with using 2 different weapons that you have equipped, with using magic when you find it appropriate, with no real requirements to equip any magic spell. The only thing is that you would want to buff it up as a stat if you want it to do more damage or to be your primary source of it. And all of those options are very easy to explore, because once you level up in Wuchang, you can respec at any point in time, because leveling up is a bit different. Instead of simply choosing what stat you want to pump, you go down a gigantic skill tree and you choose where to prioritize, either through each of the individual weapons or more general use things, or even other mechanics like the tempering mechanic, which allows you to buff up one of your weapons, and you can go pretty deep into all of the different ways that this buff is going to be applied and synergize it with your weapon of choice. And like I said, at any point at the press of a button, you can refund anything on the skill tree and the resources required for it to completely change your build. If you think that this one boss that you're fighting might be better to just take on completely ranged, all you really need to do is go and respec, and you can just change your build. This philosophy is also there when it comes to gear, both your weapons and your armor. You do not level up your weapons individually in Wuchang, instead leveling up your mastery along that skill tree, and that you can refund. This means that you level up your ability with longswords, for example, and you can swap to any other longsword and it will be at the same level, even if maybe it benefits from different stats more. Similarly, your armor pieces, for as much as there is plenty of fashion souls to be enjoyed here, is not simply stat upgrades or slowly getting better and better throughout the game, but instead every piece of armor focuses on having very specific defenses, intending for you to understand what type of damage your opponent is dealing, and then swap to an armor combination that is going to best help you against that damage type. And actually taking the time to equip the best armor for a boss fight will have a huge difference in the damage you take. All of this being very geared towards the idea that you should experiment and you should try new things out and fling cool spells all over the battlefield and fly around with a weapon of your choice, experimenting to your heart's content. And I would argue that this idea of heading into battles, normally boss fights that are very challenging and that you might want to experiment with or tailor your build for, is about half of the game, with the other half being a very Dark Souls 1 inspired world to explore. And while I love the combat here, and I've always wanted Souls games and the Souls-like genre to veer more towards that character action game difficulty or technical expertise, while I think a lot of what is here and just the very simple act of smacking enemies around and the very satisfying crunchy sound effects that accompany the combat and the hit stop and the reactions, it's just all very well done. That is just half of Wuchang and not really the reason I fell in love with it. It's more the reason that upon starting the game I said, oh, this is good, this is for me. What really has me here singing its praises is that I really like its level design. Now, just as the combat system, this won't be for everyone, and I will talk about some of my bigger problems with the game later on, but generally speaking, Wuchang follows a lot of the design philosophy of Dark Souls 1 that we really haven't seen done much since. Unlike other more recent Souls-likes, including the Souls games themselves, that their level design has focused more on straight paths with maybe a little side branch to take, Wuchang really does work based on hubs in a way that reminds of the first Dark Souls. You will reach a pivotal point and have multiple different paths to take, leading to side objectives or completely different meaningful branches that lead to important endgame objectives that all crisscross and return to that initial hub or connect to a different hub that connects to other regions completely. And exploring the world and finding all of these paths, how they connect, and finding the secrets that are hidden within each of them is just a joy. Or to put it differently, if you're a fan of those, oh wow, I'm back here moments that you find in some Souls-likes, Wuchang has a lot of those, and I enjoyed every single one of them. It also had me more than I've been in a very long time just examining a lot of the environment and looking for different paths, scouting out where the secrets might be that will lead me to the rewards that I can spy in the distance. And I always found my efforts in looking for those very rewarded. And I try and be very spoiler-free when I give a review of a game here at launch day, so I don't want to really showcase some of those moments, but trust me, they're there and they're very good. Now, having said all of this, there are some pretty big caveats that I have with Wuchang that keep it from absolute greatness. Staying on the topic of level design, I find that some of the levels thematically, some of the regions, are very visually similar, and you will spend a lot of time in palace halls and palace courtyards and, you know, city-looking things at one point that kind of blend together, and you'll find yourself confused, or at least I did, making your way through some of them, with some visual exhaustion to accompany that. This combination becomes especially difficult when you also look at their use of bonfires or checkpoints, something that is also a very good part of the level design, which is that there's not that many bonfires here. The game really utilizes those shortcuts and opening up paths and that more hub-like structure, meaning that you don't have a bonfire every 5 minutes, or as we've seen in other games like it, you know, very unnecessary bonfires from time to time. But that also means you have less markers, and you will spend time in these regions sometimes just getting lost, looking for shortcuts, unsure if you already came from an area or if you didn't, because that level design is so open that you can often take paths in reverse, make your way to shortcuts in ways that you didn't expect because you stumbled onto a secret path of some sort, and that is all awesome. But when things are so visually similar at times, it can lead to some confusion and moments where I just said, wait, I came from here, I think. Should I go down this path, or this path? I don't remember. I don't know where this is going to take me. And those were some of the more frustrating moments for me with the game. The other big caveat has to do with combat. Very often, the solution to whatever difficulty you're encountering in combat is just be more aggressive, strike first, strike harder, and you'll probably win, especially fighting the normal enemies throughout levels. There is a tried and true progression here of going through a level, encountering the puzzle, be that in combat, or how to take on a specific set of enemies in what order and how to prioritize them. And while Wuchang has great use of its level design to keep those encounters varied, be that through different enemy types or be that placing you in different sorts of arenas, sometimes very precarious beams or hallways or just straight up arenas in which you can find different enemies, and that will change how you want to progress, be that taking cover from ranged attacks or who exactly you should be targeting first. Once you've kind of figured out the navigational puzzle and what you're supposed to be doing to progress, the solution often is sprint as fast as you can towards enemy, mash the attack button, and then you won't have any problems. As long as you are not stopping to observe around yourself, you can really breeze through on the probably many runbacks that you'll end up doing, because this game also features a lot of those death traps that I know a lot of people don't like. So, oh look, there's a shiny thing over there, and if you walk towards it, somebody is gonna pop out and kick you off a ledge and you'll just instantly die. And again, this would just be highlighting that trial and error, just getting to know what the path is and then just executing it. I don't really have a problem with this, but I know that a lot of people do. So be aware that it does have that. The other bigger problem has to do with boss fights. While I found most of them to be really good and to flow extremely well with some set pieces and soundtracks that I absolutely loved, the game does have a bit of an obsession with bosses becoming invulnerable at times, which is one of my biggest pet peeves for these sorts of games. I just hate the idea that a boss just cannot be hurt, cannot be targeted in any way, and you just have to do the minigame of dodging for a while until you get to interact with them again. And I'm talking about very specific just becoming invulnerable, because I don't want this to be confused with some of the portions of fights that are very aggressive from them. We're talking combo strings of 9, 10, 11 hits that you either have to dodge through, or you have to use the tools that the game gives you to interrupt the enemy while they're doing it and find a way to just take them down. And trust me, you can. If you're dodging well, and if you know what tools you have available, those long combo strings or some of the more annoying attacks are things that you can just find ways around. But sometimes bosses will just turn into an invulnerable cloud in the sky that shoot missiles at you, and you just have to dodge. And that's it. And I really dislike it, especially in a game where you might end up fighting the same bosses, some of them very difficult, time and time again, and you just have to get good at this specific minigame. I don't like it when From Software does it. I don't like it when pretty much anybody does it. And Wuchang, in my experience, does have a bit of an over-reliance on them. And so then, having considered those slightly samey environments from time to time, and some of the issues with the bosses that I think it does make up for in the spectacle of it, and when the fight flows well in you perfect dodging, getting a hit in, perfect dodging, building up your Skyborn might, slamming somebody down with your axe in flames, or throwing out some spells with your one-handed sword. I really do think that makes up for some of the shortcomings of Wuchang. Add on top of it that we're talking about a budget game coming out at $50 with plenty of content and great fights and pretty meaty package overall. A game that's finished from start to end. No DLC, no season pass, no live service, no nothing. Which you might think, well, that's obvious, it's a single player game, but you can go ask Ubisoft about that. It's very hard for me to not recommend Wuchang. Really, just because of reasons regarding theming and some specific points of level design that I find amazing. In Lies of P, and of course in Lies of P's DLC, Overture, Wuchang doesn't quite hit those heights, but it is very notable, it is unique and a different sort of experience in the genre, and one that I very strongly recommend. Not just for fans of the genre actively, but maybe if you're lapsed or have a bit of an interest in your Devil May Cry's, your old school God of War's type of thing, and you kind of miss that old school FromSoft level design, I think this is going to scratch that itch while being a different beast in many other regards. Wuchang Fallen Feathers is a very easy recommendation from me. I hope I've done a good job of explaining who it's for and informing you on if it's a game that's going to be worth your money and your time. And once again, a huge shout out to 505 Games for providing review copy. Meanwhile, I've been Mug. Thank you so much for watching, and if this was helpful to you, consider hitting the like button, consider subscribing or checking out the channel, see the other things I do. see if that's something you would like. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers, which is bananas, but I'm really happy and excited, and I'm very thankful. A very special thanks to the members of the wall, be they patrons or members here on YouTube who directly support the channel. I am eternally grateful. Go out there, enjoy some great video games, maybe some Wuchang Fallen Feathers. And as always, I'll see you again very soon.